Hey, coaches, kicking off today's Football Scoop Online Clinic is Oakland High School head coach Kevin Creasy, who's going to share with us some ideas on how to out-leverage and outnumber a defense through formations, shifts, and motion. So, Coach, the floor is yours, man.
Coach, I appreciate you guys having me. True honor to be speaking today. Unique situation we're in, but this may be the future of, sharing with other coaches. And I think it's pretty good deal considering we're kind of stuck at home. But, I think there might be a higher power getting some of us head coaches, especially getting our attention and saying, listen, maybe instead of doing football all the time and your family being a distraction, maybe you need to be around your football a little bit, your family a little bit longer and let these clinics kind of be the distraction. So it's a neat situation to kind of be a coach and reach out and be able to connect with all these different coaches. I've been part of clinics for a long time, but these online clinics and especially the ones that Football Scoop's doing, I just listened to Coach Samuel's his 10-minute clinic the other day. Man, it was awesome, and getting a lot of ideas, and like I said, it's a great way to connect. My information's on the screen. Hopefully you can see my screen, and I'm just going to move right along. Hopefully you can follow me on Twitter. I get a lot of DMs and talking to a lot of different coaches, answering questions, and I know they're recording this, so maybe you can view it later, but if you need a zip drive, I can send you the zip drive with all the video, and I've got a lot of different clips. So I'm going to move around and try to get through this pretty quick because I got a lot of information. We're a pretty good football team, mainly because we got a lot of good players. I got a lot of good assistant coaches. We play really good defense. We're really sound in the kicking game. We've got a really, really good kicker. We've even got a kicking coach, which helps out a lot because I don't know a lot about it, but we're real sound in the special teams areas and do a really good job in the off season, the weight room. And then our offense reaps the benefits of having a good defense, good special teams, a good off-season program. Averaging 45 points a game. A little bit of background. I've been on a team that won a state championship with 30 players. I've been in the smallest classification. We're playing in the largest classification now. Won a state championship last year. 2 years ago went and lost state championship. So I've been on both sides of it. Also been on the side of defense. I was defense coordinator for 8 years, and I've been calling plays for about 11 years. And a lot of what I do is kind of what's given us trouble over the years. Okay. I want to start out with multiple formations. I'm not going to bore you with what we call stuff. I just want to tell you why we give so many formations to our opponents. And I'm not just going to give you clinic talk. I have video evidence of each one of these advantages that we feel like we get from using multiple formations. And then I have a lot of different shifts and motions, and that's kind of what I've been studying the last couple of weeks. I've delved in some North Dakota State and what they do, and we do some similar stuff, but always looking to learn. And they do a great job of personnel, formations, shifts, motions, and that's kind of what we want to do. We're going to run our basic plays. We're going to have our toolbox that we're always able to pull stuff from. We've got plays that we hang our hat on, and we've kind of evolved from a wing tee to an I formation to a spread team, and we put them all together into what works for us. We were 50-50 under center and the gun last year, and we feel like we've got an offense that's multiple because it allows us to put 3 good running backs on the field, 2 good running backs on the field, a good running back on the field, a quarterback that can run or throw, and it kind of gives us a lot of different advantages. But at some point, you're going to run into that team that's got just as many players as you that can play, not just dress out. And what we're looking for with multiple formations is a matchup advantage, create some better angles, try to outnumber them at the point of attack. We want to maybe identify some adjustments or checks that their defense coordinator have given them that week. We want to outflank defenders, dictate or expose a coverage. And here's a big one. Make your opponent's coaches work. And, we want it to be tough on the opponent's coaches, but we want it to be tough on that 16-year-old as well. The 16-year-old that maybe he's not studying football quite as much as the coordinator is. We want to make it tough on him, not just line up in the same formation that he saw the week before. All right. Real quick, I want to kind of get started showing you real quick. Our basic formation is red and blue, but when we want our tackle over, we call it north to the right and south to the left. We're in a north formation here because they're giving us a 7 technique. And I want to show you this film because we've taken our best player and we've put against their 7 technique, and that's our matchup advantage. We've also taken our fullback and put him over at a wing so that we can, at the point of attack, have 2 of our best blockers. Now, that seems kind of like a middle school or Pop Warner philosophy, but, you know, sometimes we make football a little too complicated. We want to put our best blockers at the point of attack, and by just adding the word north instead of our normal word red, we're able to do that. And then a few weeks later, same kind of deal. We got a tackle over playing tight end. We've got a fullback playing wing, but now we've gone ahead and put our tight end cracking, and you can see how much better of a job he does than a normal wide receiver, a normal pencil neck. He does a heck of a job. And at the point of attack, we've got some bigger bodies that we don't do every week. You know, this is the 4th round of the playoffs. So we're saving some of this stuff for when we need it. You know, it's one of those deals where now we're putting that guy in crack alignment, and at the point of attack, we're able to put bigger bodies instead of a lot of times these smaller little wing backs that often the wing tee gets criticized for. All right, here we have tight end with trips into the red zone, running our base stuff. We're going to run buck sweep, pin or pull, and at the point of attack, we have our 250-pound fullback. All right, he's learned more than just the trap in the belly. He's learned at the point of attack, he's a whole lot better at down blocking than maybe some of our smaller guys. And you can see him pointing there, communicating. And because of that, we feel like we have better angles, not just a matchup advantage, but we've got a better angle at how they check toward a bunch formation. All right, here's better angles again. Our tight ends to the field, they're calling the strength to our tight end. And so we've kind of outnumbered them to the boundary a little bit. We also have a pretty good blocker here at the point of attack. Again, a big old thick kid. But we also have a nice-sized wide receiver that's crack blocking the inside defender. So we feel like if we can get a hat on a hat with an angle, that we can lead to some of our bigger plays. And what I mean by bigger plays, it's not necessarily a home run, not necessarily a 70-yard touchdown, but a big play for us in the 4th round of the playoffs. You can see the Bermuda's kind of gone dormant. That means it's a pretty big deal. It's a pretty big ball game. It's win or go home at this point. So we want to find ways to get better angles. All right. Again, 2 fullbacks in the game, a tight end split out, just trying to make things tough, trying to find a way to block down and kick out somewhere. You know, this is also a matchup advantage for us. That's our wide receiver in the Wildcat, but we're still using our same toolbox. It's still block down and kick out. And we just happen to be trying to outnumber people and get a better angle. Same thing here. Got rid of the Bermuda, got a turf field. But you can see right now we've got a fullback that's ready to block down, a tight end that's split out a little bit. I want you to watch his block on this linebacker who is all region. He's a heck of a player. But because of our angle, because of us outflanking them, we have a pretty good block on a pretty good football player. All right. And like I said, it's not a home run. It's not a 60-yard touchdown, but it is a heck of a play for us in a big ball game that helped us win the region championship this year. All right. Numbers advantage, you know, again, we saw this on Saturday, somebody lining up a tight end with 2 wing backs beside of each other. It can be H-backs. We were in our regular personnel, so it's a fullback and a little wing back. This time the linebacker gets the best of us, but luckily we got ran over slowly, and because of that, it was a huge play for us. With that extra hat, they didn't necessarily check to 3 strong, which is normally their check. We had a wide receiver on the backside, so they had to stay in their 2 shell, and that was big for us. That was just another way in which in a big ball game we were able to get a numbers advantage. All right. And then, of course, sometimes we'll have to offset our fullback. That'll help us get a numbers advantage as well. You can see our running back before he even gets touched. It's 30, 40 yards down the field because we've got a hat on a hat. Same thing other way against a good opponent with a lot of speed. We want to make sure that everybody's not only got a hat on a hat, but usually you can see even on our outside runs like Rocket and Jet, we've got a numbers advantage. And if we don't, we have the ability to run it to the nub, okay? And I've got some clips of us taking advantage of numbers both directions. All right, here's quads. You know, quads is pretty good if they'll widen out with those good threats that you got out here. If you got a good wide receiver, hopefully they'll check it accordingly. We've taken the fullback out of the mix in buck sweep here, okay? It's nothing earth-shattering, but with an odd front, we have the ability to run our buck sweep and do it with people that can put a hat on a hat. And then here, I threw this in here. This is our Rocket for the state championship game a couple years ago. We felt like if we split 4 out, they would put 2 out. If we split 5 out, they'd put 2 out. Unfortunately, we don't get too good of a snap, and doesn't really work as good as we'd hope. But this is how we were going to run Rocket this week and just throw it out 5 on 2, and we still only gained 10 yards. So it was very frustrating as a play caller. A couple years later, we played these guys in the state championship. We ran it the other way. We call this formation house. It's kind of built like the shape of a house or home plate. And we ended up having a bad snap 2 years later and gained about 5 yards. So it was frustrating. Sometimes numbers, numbers aren't always the most important. Sometimes it's players and sometimes it's execution. And we didn't do a good job of executing on that particular play. All right. Help identify checks and adjustments. Sometimes you just can raise up and throw a stop route if you know a team that checks to one high safety versus certain formations. And check out this wide receiver. He does a heck of a job of run after catch. Yeah, I didn't quite teach him that move, but he got a heck of a block. And it was just something that was in our toolbox to raise up and throw a stop route. But because of identifying their check or their adjustment, we were able to have an easy throw and catch. This year in the playoffs, we had a team that shifted everybody over to our tight end wing side. So we were able to identify that, with all the different technology that we got, we can replay some things and we can make adjustments on the run now. And this was a huge play for us in a 10-7 ball game in the playoffs, second half. Of course, the kid makes a great run. We got some good blocks downfield. But a lot of it had to do with we were able to spot that their adjustment was to move everybody over a gap, and we were able to come back and counter them the other way. Outflanking the defenders, we've learned a lot of things with a running quarterback, being able to outflank guys, putting numbers into the boundary, having an RPO. Yeah, we're wing T-ish, but we're able to figure out to throw a bubble if we have to, or run our buck sweep with a quarterback. And I think it's pretty big. And same deal with running under center stuff. We're able to outflank guys. Normally our number 15 here would have a lot of trouble blocking this 9 technique, but because he's able to outflank him in this particular formation, what we call east, the opposite of it is west, we're able to get a hat on a hat. And later on the next year, we play these guys on ESPN. Even into the boundary, we're able to run jet sweep because we've gone with west to earn. All right, our formations kind of play off each other. It's east, eastern, and far east, west, western, and far west. This is western because our wideouts on out a little bit more. If our tight end wants to go even wider, we call that far west. But you can see the same team, we're able to get a hat on a hat. We're able to get angles, and we're able to make a big run in a big ball game for us. And then, of course, dictating and exposing coverages. Again, a team that checks to one high whenever they see 3 strong, we're able to get the ball out quick. And even with, guys playing their best DBs on our best wide receivers, we're able to make sure that we can effectively throw a few things that are in our toolbox. Here's a pop pass that we've been working on all year, but with this particular team, when we stack the receivers, we expose the coverage in which they move their safety over at the top, in which they're playing 2 on top of 2, and it allows for our big H-back to make a huge play for us. You can see it's 4th down. Quarterback does a good job of sticking it in there and then putting it on our H-back. I was hoping he'd score there. But again, it was from film study and knowing these guys, check a certain coverage with stacked receivers outside. So that's good. That's good for whenever we're able to use that to our advantage. Now, getting to the good stuff, why are we able to trade and shift? Why is that a big part of our offense? We feel like, in our offense, we're usually going to motion or shift or trade a lot. And we'll have different trades and shifts every single week. We don't have to use them every week, but we've got that in case we need to. With personnel mismatches, we think that it allows for, again, us to get our best people at the point of attack. It disguises plays by breaking up formation tendencies. A lot of times guys can point out what's coming, and that's never a good thing. Hopefully, by the time it's playoff time, you can break some of your tendencies, but this helps us hide some of our formation tendencies, and we'll show you film on that in just a second. Also, it confuses our guys' defensive responsibility, especially if they're defending the option. It hurts formation checking defenses. All right, it puts a lot of 16-year-olds in a bind, when they've got guys moving around. We've got a couple shifts and trades where we got about 800 pounds of linemen moving around. So we want to make it difficult on those 16-year-olds that are trying to figure out what's coming next. Plus, you can bait guys into jumping off sides on crucial downs sometimes. Key coaching point here, guys, at the bottom, you got to have complementary plays away from trades and shifts. Like I said, we do a lot of things that bothered us when I was calling defense. Luckily, we got a whole lot smarter defense coordinator now than what I was doing back in the day. But, man, we had a team that would trade a tight end or an H-back real quick, and it would just give us a lot of trouble. And, we finally just said, screw it, man. Here's what we've noticed. There weren't a lot of analytics back when we had the little yellow pad and we were doing, our analytics back then with tally marks. But we noticed that every time they tight end traded, that they always ran the ball and they always ran to the way they traded. So our adjustment against a team that was a whole lot better than us is we just blitzed 11. Everybody went toward the direction of the guy that tight end traded. And then we found a new analytic. It was pretty compelling. If you stop them for a 4-yard loss the first time they tight end trade, they never do it again. So that was a pretty good adjustment. But we also decided that when we just tight end trade, we've got to have something away from it. We've got to have a pass. What we try to do is any shift or motion, we try to have an inside run, an outside run, a counter, and then, of course, a pass off of it. That way we're not just handcuffing ourselves. The easiest one, of course, the one you see the most, is just your typical tight end trade. We call that tip because that's their tight end moving over. And here's your little clip real quick early in the season. It's one of our favorite things to do is just kind of get to the weaker side of a defense, just run power. That seems pretty elementary, pretty simple. But later on in the playoffs, we were able to use our own tendencies against a well-coached team. You see us running the boot naked here, and that's huge right there. Again, it's a big-time game whenever the grass is dormant, and you see that it's playoff time. So, again, they've taken some of their better players, moving them over with the tight end, and here's how we counterpunch it. We feel like, these good teams are going to have ways in which they're going to be able to handle some things. So we got to try to think what they would do and hopefully have a pretty good counterpunch. And this was one of them, a naked boot, one of the best counters we got going. All right. End up tight end trading here, getting away from this defensive tackle down at the bottom. He signed with South Carolina. We'd much rather run at the kid that went to community college instead. We're trying to be smart enough to at least run our best plays away from the kid that signed with the SEC school. And we did that most of the night. Just stayed away from him. We agree with the old quote, do not attack walled cities. Okay. Now, if you look at this defense, holy cow, they got so many good defenders. But when we tight end traded, you notice that nobody moved. That helped out because we had a lot of trouble moving the ball against these guys. As you can see, those D linemen were some men, and we were just trying anything. And so when we tight end traded and nobody moved, we felt like, hey, maybe this is something we can hang our hat on and have more and more success as the game goes on. And we did that. All right. Here's a rain game. Totally tore up field, mud everywhere. Again, the point of attack, we're going at a 9 technique that's more of a pass dropper. The run heavy 9 technique is up top, and they leave him up top. And so that gives us an advantage to run off tackle with our down play. All right. Later on, we're trying to get advantages. That's one of those formations that we run a lot, but by tight end trading it, it's one of those deals where, nobody's really moving. All right. It's one of our favorite unbalanced formations in which we have a wide receiver that's able to get on a linebacker, and a guard that goes out there and, hopefully can block somebody that we can have these long runs. All right. So whenever we move our strong wing back, we call it zip. He's our Z back. So instead of tipping our tight end, we've got a zip, and that allows us to get those 2 wing backs beside of each other. All right. Here's my first game at Oakland against a heck of an opponent, Hoover, high school, Hoover, Alabama. One of our best plays that we had against those guys was when we were moving our H-back over, and we got to run our pin and pull to the weak side. All right. And again, guys, I've got this all on zip drive. If you need it, just holler at me. Toss to our fullback. We're still blocking our pin and pull rules, our buck sweep rules. Big play for us just this year. We get both wing backs over, and we're still just running buck sweep. We're blocking down, kicking out, backside guard, pulling the ceiling. All right. Same deal later on in the playoffs, moving these guys over, tossing it, allows for a nice cutback, give it to the right guy. I mean, football is more complicated than we make it a lot of times. But let's get one of our better blockers over at the point of attack. Let's outnumber them. Let's outflank them. And let's give a guy a ball that can stick his foot in the ground and find daylight. All right. Make sure you're giving it to the right guys. All right. And then, of course, we want to have something away from all of our trip sets, all of our bunch sets. And so this team stays in one high safety. And so we're attacking the flank against a deep third corner, which allows for a big first down for us and gets us in the red zone. All right, when we move both of them, all right, we see some teams that move both of them, and we like it so much that we stole it. So it's zipper, okay? This particular formation for us is red R zipper, and then we end up getting back to where we wanted to outnumber guys into the boundary. We end up with 4 guys into the boundary playing an 8-man front. An 8-man front, there's not a lot they can do except move over their techniques. They move their 3 and their 1 over. But still, you can see we've got a huge advantage at the point of attack. And it's a heck of a football team that we ran this against. All right. Same thing with our I formation stuff. We're moving both over real quick, trying to get a hat on a hat. Heck of a run by a running back, just running outside zone, but doing it where we have a numbers advantage again. Without just lining up in the formation, we're shifting over to these formations that we feel like really give us an advantage. You just see there's not a lot of variety with our plays. I mean, we're running a lot of the same plays. We're just doing it out of different personnels. We're doing it out of different shifts and motions. Okay, again, our advantage here is that we shift over away from a 9 technique that's been whooping us all night to a guy that's, wearing a towel and got a sleeve and, been playing 7-on-7, obviously. He's about that life. He's not about the down blocking life. and taking on a guy that's blocking him. He's more advantage of taking on a pass, obviously. Now, same team later in the drive, we get everybody starting to kick over, and we're able to run influence trap back away from the trade. And, guy makes a heck of a run, breaks some tackles. But again, I think they're thinking that we're going toward the way of the trade. Going away from that is big for us, and we'll show you in just a second. We've got some passes off of it as well. All right. Again, moving these guys over is not necessarily, a time to get too creative. We've gone with toss sweep, for crying out loud. It's a play these guys have been running since they were in Pee Wee ball. But again, we've got a +1 advantage at the point of attack, and tossing it to the fullback is something that we can do in important ball games. Okay. And then, of course, here's how we do the toss out of the gun. State championship game a year ago, tossing it. Again, we've got a hat on a hat. Even though it's into the boundary, we feel like with the numbers advantage, give the guy, the right guy the ball at the right time, you can make things happen. All right. Here's what I was talking about, something we've added just recently, in which I was telling you, we have a formation called North, in which our tackles go over together, and usually at the point of attack, those big bodies are pretty good. But we wanted a way to get everybody shifted back over the other direction. So we call this toy trade. A lot of times our guys are given mnemonic devices to remember stuff. This is a toy, stands for our tackles are over, and they're swapping with their Y. So this example is North Toy Trade. And you'll see the first time we did this in practice, of course, our tight end got trucked by those big tackles, and everybody started giggling, and I was so ticked off. I started to just get rid of it. But, that's how stuff goes on a Monday a lot of times. But it ended up being a big trade for us this year. This is a team that is well coached, and we felt like we had an advantage by moving those big old butts over. Like I said, we worked it out where the tight end got the heck out of the way whenever we did it. So this is week 10. All right. Big run for us, week 10. Great block downfield. But a lot of it had to do with we were able to move some big bodies over. We had a couple good linemen that at the point of attack, they were pretty good. Now, even did it into the boundary here. This again is week 10 at the point of attack. They've got a lot of bodies over there, but still into the boundary. We got a hat for a hat, and smart enough to give it to the right guy. But now just think about this. This is week 10. A week later, we take advantage of a well-coached team. This is in the playoffs and a heck of a ball game. I think it's a 7-point ball game at this point. And this is our naked boot off of it. All right. This is our answer. How's this team that's well coached that we see every year in the playoffs, how are they going to handle that particular trade? Okay. And we thought, this would be a heck of a time for us to run the naked, because they just saw us run the stretch the week before. And this is a 3rd and goal situation in which we have a tackle that's eligible, our tight end's over at tackle, and he's running as hard as he can, thinking he might get the ball, but it allows for a wide out to be wide open on the drag. Okay. Hide to, seen some guys in college doing this, keeps you from having that 9 technique just run right over whenever you trade. This allows for them to trade quickly and efficiently. And again, you see a big old body here. We're moving and trying to get these guys to get some movement on this big D line. So this is just another way in which we can tip our tight end. And then if they do it good enough, give the big fella the ball. We give 45 the ball after doing a heck of a job of blocking. And unfortunately, he doesn't quite get in. But sometimes those glorified guards that we call fullbacks, you got to throw them a bone every now and then and let them see what they can do with the ball in their hands. So it was a pretty cool trade, and it was definitely a tendency breaker. All right. And then you can see here, This team we're playing, they did move their 9 over. Their run stopping 9 moved over. You know, we were trying to get away from the kid, 92. You know, he's got the neck roll. We don't want to run at the guy with the neck roll. We want to run at the skinnier guy over here. And you can see they move them over. And so what was our counter punch? It was to run our counter back at the smaller guy. Okay. So again, we can take advantage of some well-coached teams and break our own particular tendencies. All right. We've traded over and now we're running a flood route away from the trade. All right. Big play for us as well. All right. Moving right along to get our tight ends to invert. We have found that this has been big for us too, you know, especially if we can get in a 2 tight end personnel grouping. We're going to run to red, run to blue. And it helps us not only break some tendencies, it helps us get these guys' eyes a little bit confused. It helps us to hit some big plays. And later on, it helps with eye discipline. These guys are looking wrong, you know, and it allows for people to come scot-free on some passes. All right. I think I got a couple clips of this, but this was a big one for us. You know, we've been running the ball. We've been able to run buck sweep, and now we're faking buck, and we've got a guy wide open because some DBs are looking in the backfield and maybe thinking they can predict what's going to happen next. But, you know, anytime you got the DBs running all over the place, you got a potential for a big play. All right, Seesaw, again, this stands for our split end swaps opposite away from the wing back. So on this particular play, we got 4 different people moving. Instead of trading a tight end, we're trading a split end that's ineligible. The tight end's ineligible, but we make him eligible by moving that split end over. All right, again, how can you counterpunch how these guys are going to adjust to some trades? All right, we're moving, like I said, 4 different people at once. All right, again, at the point of attack, we've got a hat on a hat. We've got angles. That's exactly what we're looking for. But likewise, we want to make sure that when we get these guys set, that we're able to run our staple of plays. And rocket just happens to be one of them. And you can see how we've got a huge advantage at the point of attack on a muddy field. All right. And then likewise, we've got some seesaw trades that end up with guys wide open in the end zone. Eye discipline is affected by all this shift and motion and trade, especially if it's the first time they've ever seen it. You know, you don't see a lot of this in your perimeter period when you're working on defense that week. You know, a lot of times when you're doing the 7-on-7 work, getting ready for an opponent, you don't see a guy shift, trade, and motion, all this stuff. So over the years, these shifts have helped us. Motion has helped us here. All right. We want to be able to move our H-backs. This particular personnel group in our H-back is a wide receiver, but he's going to end up still being the wing back. All right. We're still able to, at the point of attack, run the pin and pull. All right. In the eye, we're able to motion this guy. We call it walk motion, and he blocks the unaccounted for defender. All right. How are you going to block that guy that's making every tackle in C-gap? All right. We're motion a wide out down to just get his hat on that defender, that when you draw it up, you can't always get him blocked. And then we leave that cornerback to see if he can make the tackle. All right. Again, motioning him in out of our eye stuff. This is one of our red zone personnel groupings in which we try to get in 2 tight ends, a fullback, try to get a real good athletic wideout that's willing to block at the point of attack. He turns his 5-yard gain into an 8-yard gain just because of his efforts. And then, of course, we want to have passes off of it as well. I think you can see the safeties moving around, and we've got a guy that we're trying to hit, and we just miss off his fingertips. And here's the key coaching point. When you do decide to go for the jugular, you just tell the quarterback, just throw it as far as you can. Maybe that at least back them up the next time we do it. All right. Idiot motion kind of looks like we're going all the way across. You can see our guys, our H-back coming back in, our fullback that particular week had a separated shoulder. So we've got an H-back that's a willing blocker. You know, we've got 2 tight ends in the ball game, and he's coming up and he's making a heck of a block. Later in the game, we give the same look. We run a little RPO off of it, and you see those backers reading the guard, and that allows for a huge play for us in the red zone. All right, Liz slide to the left, rip slide to the right. That gets our H-backs on over, and it gets them over quickly. You know, we don't have to get set like a shift for a second. You know, getting set after shifting for a second allows for some of these guys to get ready for maybe what's coming. But we try to get that guy moving quickly. And now at the point of attack, we've got two wing backs and a tight end. And like I said, it allows for getting our guys in space and trying to get at the point of attack as many good blockers as possible. All right. 4th round of the playoffs a couple of years ago to go to the state championship. You can see we've got some big old butts over there at the point of attack, playing in the mud, playing on a field that's destroyed. We're getting as many of our good blockers as possible, and it's still just power. We go the other way with Liz slide and run power weak the other direction. It allowed for a huge 7.5-minute drive right out of halftime after the field had been destroyed. You know, we're able to move those guys in both directions. You know, it's kind of a wing T set, but it's also a power run game in which you can move those guys in both directions and try to be able to attack, you know, maybe a weaker opponent, a weaker defender with a better blocker. And like I said, you got to have some unselfish guys willing to do that sort of thing. And then, of course, a year later, we're doing the same type of motion against the same team who happened to win the state this past year. But we had a heck of a game with them. But we're trying to use their smarts against them and have a good counter away from Liz slide motion. All right. And then here's rip slide out of the gun, in which we're able to take advantage of a play action pass that led to a big gainer for us. Okay. So you can not only just run the ball, but you can try to find a counter, try to find some type of trick play, and then, of course, try to find a good advantageous pass, which is what we've done here. All right. And then Rio and Leo slide, another way to get an extra blocker at the point of attack. All right. We're getting these guys at the point of attack, and then whenever we feel like the defense is really creeping in and their eyes are wrong, you know, maybe on a 3rd and 3 like we are here, we're able to stick it in there, fake the G lead, and then, of course, throw the pass to a better receiver. You know, if we did this with a tight end, it may not be as good. On this particular play at tight end, we have an extra lineman. So maybe all week they've been told, hey, 63 is ineligible. He's playing tight end right now. Don't worry. They're probably going to run the ball. And then we've got a G lead pass that we run under center in the gun and out of our wing T sets. All right, again, big ball game. We're faking outside zone. You know, our tendency had been, you know, we're going to run the ball at the point of attack, trying to get a numbers advantage. You know, this is an opponent we played in the state championship a couple years ago. And then we had a rematch with them 2 years later. So they kind of know what we like in the red zone. And so we're able to sneak a guy out, but that allows for the tight end to get wide open. So, again, find ways to not only get your playmakers the ball, but find ways in which you can not just hand it to them, but let's get a good little pass to them every once in a while. All right, SAP Motion, our number 99, we named this after SAP. That was his nickname, but, of course, he played D-line for us, but he was a heck of a blocker at the point of attack. I want you to just watch this kid. When we call SAP Motion, it's motion inside that allows him to block a D lineman, something that we've never done before this ball game. And so, in his honor, we still call this SAP Motion. We didn't know what to call it, but he figured it out pretty quick. Whatever his name was called, he came down and blocked whatever 5 technique he saw. And so we still run it this day, and it's still called SAP Motion. That guy is legendary for some of these blocks he made to springboard us to a state championship my second year here. All right. And then, of course, he taught me into this pass. He came up with this on his own. I never thought it would work. We got a little lead, and we threw it, and I told the quarterback, don't throw it to him, whatever you do. He'll never shut up about me throwing him the ball. But as you can see, that sucker was a football player. And 99, it's kind of an honor to wear that jersey and even do this motion nowadays in honor of this kid. But we stuck with it after he graduated. This is a big ball game for us, SAP Motion. You know, we got a kid that he's injured, and he's still able to make this block for a huge touchdown run on a kid that signed with Oklahoma this past winter. All right. And then this is this year, 27. You can see maybe if he lines up there, he'll have a hard time blocking the kid that's about 5 inches taller than him. But with that motion, he's got his momentum going in the right direction. And again, that's what we talked about with our formations, you know, point of attack, angles. We're able to block people that are just as good as us. And then tattoo is something we'll trade on this. We'll go on to and try to get somebody to jump off sides. I've got about 10 clips of this. Like I said, if you want the zip drive, I've got a lot of clips in which we're bringing, you know, in big ball games, we're moving those guys. And there's some people that are jumping off sides, giving us an easy first down. You know, you can't use it all the time, but you need to keep that in your You need to keep it in your pocket for maybe some big 4th down situations. And tattoo stands for take a timeout. In case they don't jump, we'll try it 2 or 3 times, you know, 2 or 3 shifts, 2 or 3 motions. And, you know, looks like everybody's coming on this 4th down. And, you know, it only takes one guy. And that's what we say in practice all the time. There's always one. Even our scout team guys, man, they're always ready to you know, make the play on scout team, and they'll jump off sides every time. All right. At my other school, you know, when we were having some guys, we had 30 on the team. We had to get those guys at the right point of attack. And here's some other ones that we've used over the years. Y over, Y outside. It's another way for us to get in an unbalanced formation. We just call that yo-yo. So we're in red tight. We go yo-yo and end up in an unbalanced formation. Yahoo, Y cross, H comes off, and our running back now becomes the wide receiver. So we end up in that end over formation and crack alignment without being in our regular personnel. We've got 2 blockers at the point of attack that are a whole lot better a lot of times than maybe that little 150-pound wingback. And this is one we've been using to get back in the eye both directions. It's tough. Our tight end is under the first fullback. So this would be red doubles, tough right. And then we can go tough left as well and get in our basic eye formation stuff and run our basic stuff. And then our tight ends, like I said, one time we had our fullback that blew his shoulder out. And so he had a hard time running power. And so we got in these formations in which we had both tight ends in the game, and we were able to stem over. And so our tight end rocked back, and our other tight end became a true tight end, and we were able to do some things like run our power plays without having a true fullback in the ball game. All right, guys. Again, this is my email. You can shoot me an email to get a copy of this flash drive. I had to shorten it a little bit. I probably got about 30 more clips on the flash drive if you need it. I know that Coach Samuels is recording this, and it'll be up for you to review. But if there's some other things or maybe a extensive amount of formation shifts and motions that you want, I got the zip drive, and you can contact me through this email or get a hold of me by direct messaging me on Twitter at Coach Creasy _OHS. And like I said, it's been a true pleasure. I know I've got a few minutes. Is there any questions I need to answer, Doug?
Yeah, I got a couple for you.
Okay.
Are you a one or two shift team, or are there times you're going to shift 2 or 3 times before snap?
Yeah, usually it's just one. And like I said, we get creative and try to do one per game plan. during the regular season. And then with us, when it becomes playoff time, we have 2 or 3 of our favorite ones that we always have access to. So we'll try a shift, a different game plan, a shift a week in the regular season, and then we'll take our 2 or 3 favorites with us into the playoffs.
Gotcha. I think that's good. You coach at the small school level and the big school level and had success. So what's the biggest common denominator between both of those schools and maybe your approach? What have you found?
And that's a great question. I'd say the biggest obstacle is getting hired at the big school. I had 4 or 5 interviews at really good schools that I was, maybe the runner-up or whatever. I had a good interview, but, I never did it at the highest level. So I got passed over 4 or 5 times. And so luckily I finally got an opportunity. But to tell you the truth, it's not as hard as some superintendents or principals make it. It's still football. At the end of the day, it's still football. It's still tackling. It's still blocking. It's still hanging on to the football. It's still having a good plan for a kicking game and just coaching kids, having relationships with kids and getting them to buy into what you're selling and believing in you and having relationships for some of these guys to run through some walls for you. So at the end of the day, like I said, we take football a little too serious sometimes. I'm one of the world's worst. I'll stay up in my office till 1 o'clock in the morning sometimes. But at the end of the day, it's still just football. You got to have somebody that can block. They got to have somebody that can tackle. And you got to see who can hang on to the ball and make plays in critical situations. And hopefully we get our guys ready for that. But at the end of the day, man, I was lucky that somebody took a chance on me. But at the end of the day, man, it's still getting those guys to buy into what you're selling and then executing at some critical moments.
Do you find it, as you install this, your first or second year to schools, is it have a tendency to get more guys on board quicker because, you're not statically standing somewhere and maybe being wasted? You're really getting all 11 guys involved or, at least 10 of the 11 involved. So is it, you find it quicker, you get buy-in with guys?
Yeah. It's one of those deals where, in practice, you're still running power, you're still running buck sweep. But you've kind of window dressed it up and even the players realize, this is something a little bit different and I've got to be paying attention. I've got to be a part of this and I'm a key cog to this play. So yeah, it's one of those things that, I showed you a clip where we ran it against Hoover, Alabama, our first game in which I got the job. It's probably why I got the job. Nobody really wanted to play Hoover to start the season. But at the end of the day, that was one of the first things we're like, listen, at the point of attack, we've got to have one of our better blockers. And, that's what I love about the offense is a lot of times you got to be unselfish. And one thing that we felt like we've done best around here is, we have some highly recruited guys. And, maybe that 4-star that's being recruited as a DB, when he comes over and plays wide receiver for us, he'll stick his nose in there and he'll block somebody. And he'll do it for the team. And, a lot of times that's lost nowadays. A lot of guys are not worried about, somebody else's run or somebody else's reception. But a lot of people can find out what you're made out of when they see how you block. And we had a couple clips of a guy he won a national championship for LSU. But for us, a lot of times he was out there blocking, but he showed how much he cared about his teammates by sticking his nose in there and helping the team out.
That's great stuff, Coach. Really appreciate you hopping on with us, man.
Man, I appreciate you guys having me.
Thanks, Kevin.